Welcome back, everyone. It is so great to see you again. I was talking to some of you over on my group page on Facebook, so don't forget to look in the description box down below if you want to join that group. So we were talking about this. I posted this and I asked you guys if you wanted to give it a try, and a lot of you asked for a video on it. So I'm here to paint this for you and show you some different ways to do it. Stay to the end of the video because we're going to talk about brushes. We're going to talk about alternative ways to get to the same result and some additional things you can do to this to make it even more fun to paint. But we're going to have a really good time doing this in this tutorial. I also wanted to let you know about my watercolor class because some of you might not even know about it yet. And it is a watercolor workshop that is all inclusive. So it's pretty exciting because it shows you everything you need to know as a beginner from start to finish. And there are so many cool things to see inside of it. Where do you get it? So if you go to my website, jacquelinejax.com, you can easily just sign up for the course right there. Let me show you what it looks like. So inside the course, there's all these little modules, and there's literally dozens of videos on how to paint with watercolor, from everything from starting your journal to choosing materials and everything in between. So you would just kind of go through and look for, just start at the very beginning and work your way through all of the different modules in here. But some of them that are really, really cool and helpful, I think you would have so much fun with. And I've only ever pictured one of the actual videos in the front of it, and I intend on getting a blog post up on my website where you can see a lot of these, because I think there's so many to see that you haven't seen yet. Like under the painting in your watercolor journal, there are so many things to paint, from sunflowers to cornflowers to, flower petals, trees, cities, skylines, ocean sunsets, landscapes, granulating washes, and sketchbook stuff. I mean, there's so many things in there that aren't pictured at the intro to this watercolor class. And I think you would have so much fun, like the painting the goldfish with the using gold. There's gouache section on here. There's a lot of hidden sections in this, and it's ongoing. So it's all inclusive. Once you actually get into the class, I add new videos every month. Like just recently, I added in the landscaping section this one on cityscapes. And it's really cool because you literally get to learn how to paint these really, really nice cityscapes on top
So now
of
that we have some
up.
buildings laid in, we've got our colors, our background.
So if you want to learn how to do this,
I'm thinking
literally this one is in the beginner watercolor class. All right, so enough on that. I'll give you more previews later if you really want more information about what's in the class. And I'll try to get a blog post, like I said, up with some samples of all these different videos, because there are a ton of them in this class. And it's only one price that is so inexpensive. So go and give it a try. All right, let's go back and get started on this. So this is a very, very simple one color watercolor. So we're just going to choose one color. You can choose any color that you like. You don't have to do the same one. This is a color range from my Schmincke wood box set that you guys, I have actually reviewed on the channel, which is really fun. So you should go and check that out. I actually have it over here, but my camera's not aimed at it. But these are all of the different paints that come within that box. So of course, indigo is what I used for this one. But I was thinking that maybe since I already have an indigo one, I would use a different paint, like maybe Prussian, or this is really pretty too. Like, I really love how this looks. And then the Prussian green's really, that's really nice. So it's kind of, what should we choose? There's so many beautiful colors here. I have no idea. Maybe let's do a Prussian blue, because I really like Prussian blue. That is a beautiful, beautiful $4.92 from this set. I just have to find it. So there's also like Paris is beautiful. I think this is the Prussian. $4.92. That's it. All right, so we're just gonna throw some water on this because we like to pre-wet things. I'm gonna put it in my little ceramic palette. That ceramic palette actually comes with the Schminke wood box set of 48 colors. It's such a lovely set. Just for this tutorial, I'm just going to use a 100% cotton watercolor cold press paper. This is acid free by Paul Rubens. They tend to be really inexpensive, but any 100% cotton paper is great. If you don't even have 100% cotton, then just use what you have until you get a little bit better. In my experience, the absolute best one to use is Arches, and as you might or might not know, I actually do these watercolor journals myself, and I did do a video on how to make them with Arches. So it's just basically you get one pad of Arches for what, like $20, and you can make this great journal with like a ton of pages in it. So I actually used, this was one of the demos for the landscape, like a cityscape, in that watercolor journal class that I painted, but I won't go through this now. So anyway, this is the best paper to use. I love that. It is amazing, but I need more space. So I'm going to use this one because it's just big. And I have one of my favorite brushes here, which is the Escoda size 4 Versatile. And this is a round, but it's a long round. Very distinctively different than some of the other ones. Like here's a Escoda Ultimo, but it's also a long, but it's a size 4 in the travel brush. So you can see how they are significantly longer than the average rounds. And I love the quality of these brushes. I've done multiple reviews on these on my channel here. So if you want to check those out, you can. I also recommend the Escoda size 10 Versatile. You guys have all asked about this brush so often because I paint so much with it, like literally I might even just paint this with it just so you can see, because it's fun. It's a really fun brush to use. And you'd be surprised. This is a size 10 and you're going to be like, how is she going to paint that with that 10? Well, it is so easy. I can't even say. So on this painting, a lot of you didn't know where to start. I would, just for fun, let's just do a splatter. Okay, just for something a little bit different so that we can just kind of throw caution to the wind. And let me get my little ceramic dish here. I'm going to get some color on my brush. So I'm just kind of dipping and rolling just to see what the color is like. Yay. Let's go ahead and put this in here. Gives me more edges to roll. So I always like to use a ceramic palette. And the reason why, and I say this all the time in my classes, is because if you just put your brush in your pan or your tube, or even, on your palette, you don't always get the right amount of color into the brush and you can't really see. So I'm like mixing a little bit of water to get just a nice range. I don't want to use the color too dark and I don't want to use it too light right off the bat. But for a splatter, we want a lot of water. So it can be, it can be as diluted as you like, whatever you're comfortable with. And all right, we're ready. So we're going to grab another brush just to get the splatter going. And I'm just going to, bam, one more, and one more. So I'm just kind of doing 4 areas of my paper right now. And I can pick up a little more. I'm getting this everywhere, of course. Let's get a little more water, dilute it out, just so I can kind of really get things activated. So this, I think, is the funnest way to do this because, of course, you got these fun little splatters going on. So that was fun, right? It's a good time. So now we've got some watercolor on here. So one thing that you could do is you could take a spray bottle and say down here, you're just going to spray. Ooh, look at that. That's pretty cool, right? Can you see that? Let me get you down a little closer. So by spraying, I'm just kind of pushing it and letting the paper do the work. Just spraying the little dots. So now when that dries, I'm going to end up with a dispersed area that looks a lot like that. Correct? Yeah, I know. And I'm not going to touch it because I really like, I like these little areas to be independent, right? I just don't want them to kind of blend in together. And I don't mind having some areas where it has really grabbed the roundness of the color on the paper. Another way to do it is we're going to hold our brush to the end and we're just going to kind of do this. So depending on what brush you have, it's going to make different marks, right? My brush, as I'm turning it, is just kind of scribbling out. I'm leaving a lot of white space, but I'm just going to go really organically around like kind of a semicircle. It's a little bit of a round circle, you know, like it's kind of a flower shape on the top, right? And there we go. And we don't want to go over it too much because if we go over it too much, it's going to lose its shape. So that's another way to do it. We're going to work with that later. This one over here, I'm going to just touch the splatter dots. Why? Because we just let the splatter be organic. And this is going to keep me from making it look too even and too perfect. And we don't want that because when you make things look too perfect, like have you ever done a tree and you do the tree like so perfectly round and you keep adding to the tree and you get really frustrated because you're like, oh my God, my tree looks like it's a comic book. And it does because naturally you want to see the tree as something different than it actually is. And if you really study trees, you would see the trees are not perfect. They actually have more branches showing than we actually paint usually, unless we paint a bare tree. So that's a classic example of that. So there we go. So we just touched some of the little dots on the paper. And this one down here, I'm going to actually use a little more full pan of paint. And I'm going to just kind of roll my brush in a weird little way around the bulk of them. And then I'm going to take more and I'm going to dot just the paint splats. So just take it easy. Don't do too much. Just like that. Just dotting the paint splats. Don't make it perfectly round, please. I hate perfect round circles unless it's a moon. Then it can be perfectly round. Okay, don't go over the areas that are wet. The reason why, because they'll just blend and 100% cotton paper keeps working after you're done. It really does. So while we're waiting for this to dry, I'm going to get a little bit more color right from the pan on the end of my brush. And if you have your watercolor in your ceramic plate, then you would just kind of dilute it out with water until you get to the right color mix. And on the tip of my brush, I'm going to hold it very, very loosely. And I'm actually going to go from the bottom to the top. And I'm going to let it just kind of do that. See how it gets nice and wiggly? There. And here. I even hit a little bit of the wet area. See, it exploded. And this one. That's what I love about this brush. Now, this is a size 10, right? You're like, wow, she's got a really big brush. And it works. It does. Now, at the base of your flower, I am going to make kind of like a little heart or a little V shape like that. Just like that. So easy. And then I can, as this is drying, I can add a little more color because we left a lot of room. So I can grab some color and just by eye, I can just kind of dab a little more color in there just to get some different qualities through it. Because remember, this will keep working as it dries in 100% cotton paper. That's what's so forgiving about using good paper. And this isn't even, I mean, this is above grade, right? It's not bad. It's a good it's a good paper. It's well made. They do a good job. So on this one, let's just do a little bit of a roll. So I'm just going to kind of do that little V shape right like that, because it just gives me a base on the corner of my stalk, you know, like on the top. And on here, we're going to do some little like just freeform, fun little shapes, just like that. So easy. And down here, I think I'm just going to add some beautiful little shapes just because I find it really fun and floaty and beautiful. Let's keep our brush nice and wet in here. As it's drying, you see how it's different qualities, right? So we can kind of go back and touch some of these areas so that we can get different weights of the same. So you have values. And as you get little values, it's nice because it makes it look so much more interesting. You could even cover some areas and do another splat, you know, a couple of them. If you want more splats on your paper, if that's what you're going for, you could just go crazy. You know, this is a point where you could even add another color if you wanted to. I personally love the look of this monochromatic. You know, I think it's so elegant and so beautiful. And I think that's what really attracted you guys to it. So I just went through, and you see how I went and I just added another value. As it dries, we can do that again. So here I'm going to like dilute this a little bit because I want to add some feathery kind of leaves to this, or just kind of go in and establish another line. So maybe we'll just establish a heavier line like this, starting at the top, and I'm just going to connect it just like that. And then I'm going to grab a little more color and I'm going to let it just kind of develop a little bit bigger shape at the top so that I have a little more weight on it, right? And then remember, as we go through, this is still wet, so it's kind of wet. So let's go, and we're going to connect a few of them, but not much, just a little bit. So I'm just kind of going to strike in here just a few times with the thin of my brush. And I'm going to decide which areas are going to be on top and which are not. So the reason why is because we're going to put another layer on here in a second. So say I had a branch coming out and maybe it's going to go on top of this layer here to give it more dimension, right? Then I've got another one that's going to come through here for a little bit, and maybe one that goes this way and this way. So I've kind of made some on top of the layer that I have that started, because I'm going to add a little more depth onto that layer. Now this little smooshy one down here is starting to dry. So let's go ahead and start to draw some little things and see what happens. So we can see it did not dry as much as we wanted to, but that's okay because I'm going to just kind of go with this little bit. And I did this on purpose because I really wanted you to see how you can just touch it with your finger and you can now move it around. Isn't that fun? It's neat. Get your fingers in there. Look at that. So making another kind of pretty little flower that's like going to be a little more. Actually, I love doing this with my finger. It's fun. It's beautiful. It's going to touch my finger right into the paint. Okay. I don't want it to be even, you know, so I'm just going to go ahead and it's kind of neat. Like the artist's fingerprints are actually on the page. So when that dries, you can add another depth to it if you want. This would be a great way to kind of mold out your background if you wanted like that to happen. You know what I mean? Like maybe put two of these together. Like we could, this would be really cool. Look at this. We can take a little water, get this going here, spray it. Okay. Let it be really random. Like a little, just like that. And then we can kind of move it around with our finger while it's wet. Develop it out just a bit, just so that you know exactly what you want to do with it. Aren't you glad you stayed? As I told you towards the end of the video, I was going to show you like a really cool alternative way to get like these fun little shapes. Okay, we're going to wait for that to dry because we don't want it to be, we want it to be the background layer. I'm gonna feed it a little bit at the bottom. So you see what I did? I fed it a little bit, just a bit of color there, just so that it branches in. I thought that would look kind of cool, and I'm gonna just give it a couple more, like there. I'm just kind of playing right now. I'm just like using my creative energy to, you know, spruce it up a little bit and make it look unique, because I like the way it's spreading, you know. It's kind of neat the way it's spreading. I'm adding a little more depth to this one, just in some of the darker areas, just a couple of touches, just so that it you know, I want see how it like has now different dimensions, because when you're working with just one color, a lot of times with watercolor you have to go back in and do it. So let's go back up to this one over here, and I'm gonna have a sip of my tea. Did you guys bring tea? Okay. So now we're gonna add another layer. So I'm just gonna grab some watercolor on my brush. Always hit the palette just so that I can smooth it around, because I don't want to pick up any pigment, or say this is granulating color. You don't want it like anything that you don't know is going to happen. You want it to be a little predictable, although it's not terrible if it's not, you know, but at this stage in the game, you might want it to be predictable. So let's just see what happens if we just kind of touch some of these areas in a very, very strange way. Just holding it to the very end of my brush, because you're an artist. You don't want this looking like a comic book. You don't want it to look perfect. Okay, so how pretty is that? But if we want like that schmoosy look, we could just take our water and spray it. And look what happens. We now have different things happening here. Let's go this way. So this is just a little mist. And no matter what your spray bottle's like, it's going to do something different. Cool. I like that. It's just such a nice little surprise. So I'm just going to add some color here, add some color here, add some color there, and we're going to hit it with the spray bottle. Now, eventually it's going to start blending into itself, but I actually love what it's doing there. I think that that's so pretty. And if I take my palette off and I just kind of like let it, let me get this out of the way so that you can see more. If I pick up my paper, because this is on a board, I can get some really nice little edges here. Right? So wherever the water is, it will bleed into that, and then I'll end up with a nice little edge. I like that. And I'm not going to put water here because I kind of love that it's kind of molding here and not there. You know what I mean? And it kind of spread out there. That was really pretty. Let's see if we can get one here. Get it to do something. Maybe just give it a little more color so it has something to run. Something to run with. Just giving it a little bit. Just in some of these areas, I could take it right from the palette to get a little darker. And I'm not going to overdo it because it's going to travel, you know, and you don't want it to look the same. So look at that. How pretty is that? It's beautiful. See, it's still moving. So I like it kind of going out like that. Right? I think that's really beautiful. So we'll leave that alone and let that be just what it is. It's so pretty. Now this one doesn't even look half as nice as that one. So we're going to take our brush and water. Okay. This is even, I think this was, every time I go back and do more on these things, I end up making them even prettier than they started. So I think if you stuck with this video so far, you probably are really, really loving this right now. So here, let's go ahead and get some of that going. Let's just touch it with a little bit in some of the areas. We've already got this really, really nice layer, right? I'm going to do that. Add a little bit of color. And set our brush down. And let's just take our spray bottle and I need to spray it because I keep tipping it over. And I'm going to really spray this one because I want this to be really nice and full. And then, now that I got it kind of like that, I'm going to take my finger and I'm just going to kind of dot it up and around just a bit. I don't want to break these lines. I want to I don't want to just break the natural randomness of what just happened, right? I really love it, but I did like it to expand, and I know I'm going to do something over here. So it's working its way down, and I love the fact that it's blending in here. It's really pretty, and I actually think I should blend something here, but let's wait for that real quick. Let's go down here and do something here. So again, I'm just going to take this, and why not just splatter it? Let's just splatter it. We haven't done a splatter yet doing it with this technique, so I'm going to get some color, and I'm just going to randomly splat, which I'm really loving. Okay, and we're going to spray it with the water bottle. Not too many times. One that way. One that way. One that way. Yay. One that way. Oof. Look at that. It's beautiful. Look at how pretty it is. I don't know about you, but I really love this. I really do. Now this is still a little bit, I want a little more power in there. So I'm going to take my brush again. Tell me you're not going to go run around looking for this brush. This is why I use it all the time. I just love it. It really is great. You just don't get this with any other brush. Use my, please use my affiliate link if you can, because it really does help us to fund our giveaways on the group page. When I see credits in there, I just give the money away to you guys so that we can buy you presents just to encourage you. So I'm not going too crazy because, as you can tell, some of this is not dry yet, but I can fill this one up. Okay, because this is dry over here. But look at how cool this is looking. It's looking so good. It's almost looking like snow a little bit. Okay, so now down here, we're going to go and just do some little circles in color. And see how that looks. Just kind of turning my brush a little bit, doing some little circles with the tip because it's got that nice floaty big tip. And that kind of gives us a little bit of texture. But I don't want it to be, I want it to be really loose. So I am going to spray some of it so that it has that nice look. And here, rather than touch it, I'm going to go ahead and spray it out again because it's starting to give us a little more texture on the paper. And then on these ones where there's just tiny little dots, I'm just going to add more paint. Now this is me playing to get these really, really nice layered effects and how I go about it. You can do anything you want. If you don't want to touch these dots and you like the way they're looking on your paper, then leave them. Let them dry. You can always add another layer. You know, patience is your best friend in one way with watercolor. And in some other ways, it can be, you know, you need to not be patient. You need to move quickly. So it just depends on what you're doing. And remember, you got your finger here, so you can get dirty. Get your finger in there and start moving paint around and see what it does. Put some down. I really love to use like pastels because I can use my fingers a lot, but I use my fingers in watercolor all the time. I just feel like I can accomplish, a lot with different tools. I've also got something, this is really fun to use too, since you're sticking with me here to the end on this one. We can take like a plastic card, or you can take just a twig, right? And you can dip it in your paint. And you can scrape some lines right in that. Let me get you down here so you can see. I'm scraping lines right in my paper because this is watercolor paper and 100% cotton. It's soft when it's wet. And so you can literally indent the paper with these beautiful little lines to get some movement, or almost tree-like branches into your art. Isn't this beautiful? So when you're on your walks, I go on walks with my dogs every day. I collect these little twigs. I do. Especially this time of year when everything's dry on the ground between fall and winter. I just get all different kinds of them. The dogs grab most of them, but I get the little ones and stick them in my pocket, bring them home, and I just use them in my watercolors all the time. So I actually prefer this, digging into the page, than I do using a brush to get it, because I feel like it's a lot more organic and it gives you a really nice effect. And just hold it. Hang on, let me adjust. So hold your twig far away and try different angles. Scratch different things in there. I feel like, I find that this, it's just so nice and random and just beautiful, and it just looks so much more natural than, I feel like it's way more effective than a brush, no matter what brush. And I have some great brushes. I have so many brushes over there. I'm actually going to be putting in a bunch of brushes into this case here. There's the palette. And so that I can reference my favorites all the time for you guys, because you're always asking me what brushes I'm using. And I mix them all in together, and then I've got to pull them all out. And I always forget one or two. All right, so I don't want to go too crazy with this. I think this is great. This is awesome. This looks good. Let's go in here and add some little areas through the whites to establish just a little bit of branches on those flowers, like little stems. So I'm just kind of going from my base here, and I'm connecting, just dipping my twig in. That's why I wanted you to stick around to the end, because I always have like these really cool little extra things in my videos that the really good dedicated artists get to see because they hang out. So it's kind of special. It's like you're getting a nice little free extra tutorial. And these are little tips that I would normally put in my watercolor classes. So the watercolor classes, of course, have all these little fun projects and ticks and trips and, and all that. Because I have a lot more time in those, We just paint. Okay, so now I'm just kind of playing for balance, like some of these areas I want this to look really wistful. So I find that sometimes you need to connect things so that you can get the eye moving. Now, see, if I went back with my paintbrush, it would be this, but look at these beautiful streaks I'm getting through using the twig. See how I get all these different textures now? Okay, let's get some body going with this. So I'm just gonna get some water on my twig and let's push this in. Using different sides of the twig, and that's why as I go around you see some thicker lines, and that I feel like instinctively right now I'm looking at this as a whole piece and I'm looking for movement. You know, how do I create the most movement I can in this? And I think I've really kind of got it. You know, I like the fact that this is really light. I like that this is kind of not dark as this side. I think this is looking really, really good. So let's kind of stand back a little bit and evaluate it. Let's adjust my camera. I love what happened up here. Remember, we sprayed it and we just kind of moved it around a little bit. Use the fingers. You know, I let this kind of really explode back in here. It would have been fine if it would have exploded here, even here. It could have gone further, but we don't want to like create too perfect of a line. I kind of like the fact that your eye goes to this one and that there's nothing going on in here, and that like if I wanted to frame it, I could actually frame this in two different things, but if I wanted to frame it, you know, I have like different framing options where this is not the focal piece. This is actually the focus, but you know, we kind of have something going off the side of the page, much like I did, like when you did this one, there was something going off on the side of the page, you know, simple, but I actually love this. I love this color. It's so, so beautiful. Really, really pretty. All right, this is good. So I'm not going to sign this one yet because I want to frame it first. I want to figure out what frame I'm going to put it and where and how I'm going to frame it, right? Like just kind of figure out that and then I'll sign it. But I absolutely love this. This is going on my wall. This is so, so pretty. Okay, well, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope I didn't take too much of your time and you learned some good things. I told you about a couple of brushes, but I try to do that in every tutorial, and I hope you guys will come over and take my class if you haven't yet. I think you'll really love it. I put a lot of time and energy into them, and that's definitely one way you guys can give me back is just by signing up for the class so you can keep learning with me. I also have a class on transparent flowers, and in that class, again, tons and tons of different kinds of flowers to do. I'm putting up a class on landscapes, so we're going to learn trees and doing lush, beautiful landscapes, really free-form landscapes that are going to be really fun this year. So I have several courses available, but right now there is the watercolor for beginners if you want to get started with that, and there is the floral course. So you're welcome to them. I'll link them up in the description box below, and you can always find them at jacquelinejacks.com. Bye, you guys. I will see you later. Happy painting.